Although you don't want to go anywhere, it's our friend Frank Figliuzzi, retired FBI assistant director, MSNBC national security expert. His book, Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killers, was a bestseller. And sign up for his Substack, which is growing. I saw it, and he's doing Substack Live. So go to Substack and check out Frank Figliuzzi. Hello, Frank. How are you this evening?
Dean, it's great. Thanks for all the plugs. I can always count on you to try to get me a
That's
few
what I do.
few more subscribers and followers. But I'm glad to be here. There is so much to talk about, and none of it's
There is.
very good. None of it's very good.
No. And by the way, this show is simply an infomercial interrupted by news. Just so people know, it's always selling something. Earlier in the show, I was selling my fiance's one-person show, just playing in New York. And then I got to plug John Fugelsang's new book that came out today. I got a copy of it. He was on the show to talk about it already. Great book, Separation of Church and Hate. It really is an infomercial.
Yes,
Let's talk
actually,
about the
I'm
news, though.
I'm looking forward to Separation of Church and Hate. I want to buy that book. Yeah.
It's a great book. I read it because I had gotten an advance copy, and I interviewed John last week. We did a whole hour special on the book. And now it's actually physically out, and I have it right next to me here. It's a great book. So, Frank, yesterday you were emailing me. You were irate over the Supreme Court decision that we've been talking about. The Supreme Court 6-3 ruling ends the injunction essentially against racial profiling, to really put it at the base of it. And I thought Kavanaugh's opinion, which he did not need to write, was it just smacked of a white privilege. So briefly detained people. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why did you even write this? So, Frank, tell us what really upset you about it, because I could tell in your tone in the email it was very upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I both have law degrees. I spent 25
Mhm.
years enforcing the law. It was drilled into our head what the concept of reasonable suspicion is. And this Supreme Court decision, which, by the way, as you pointed out, they didn't even explain it. Kavanaugh, for reasons that escape me, except trying to rationalize it to himself, I think, decided to
Right.
write some comments on it, but we don't know what the hell they were thinking. But here's what you need to take away from this. The notion of reasonable suspicion now seems to include your skin color, your broken English accent, and where you hang out, particularly for jobs. So what are we talking about? We're talking about, of course, the practice that really came to light and was challenged in the LA area, went all the way to the full appellate court, Central District of California. The concept of grabbing people at Home Depot who are hoping for
Yep.
some work today,
Yep.
I'll help that contractor finish out the basement. Sure. The back door of kitchens at restaurants where lots of our Mexican friends take a smoke break when they're working. What the Supreme Court has said is, hold on a minute, ICE. If you're using these factors of skin color, broken English, and where you hang out as reasonable suspicion to detain somebody, the federal appellate court in California said, no, 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 that's not it. That's not reasonable suspicion to detain people. You got to have more than that. And the Supreme Court said, no, you don't. We're lifting the ban that the California federal court,
What?
appellate court applied. What does that mean? So here's the thing. What at first people might say, okay, Frank, are you claiming they're redefining reasonable suspicion? Yes, I am. And here's why. Reasonable suspicion is supposed to be specific and articulable facts that a crime
Right.
is occurring or has occurred. And in this case, let's substitute crime for the administrative violation of being here undocumented. Okay. I disagree with this court. I do. But I also hear people saying, Frank, this is immigration enforcement. What are the agents supposed to do but go to where the undocumented migrants are more likely to be? My answer to that is twofold. First, there's a lot more efficient, smart way of doing this. A lot. What we're watching with masked men grabbing people and throwing them into vans, masked men who don't identify themselves, no badge number, no agency name, that's not the efficient, smart way to do this. Let's not kid ourselves. This is performative. This is a show. This is to get us used to seeing masked men grabbing people on the street. This is not about reasonable suspicion or doing this effectively. If you wanted to do it effectively, go to the third party vetting companies like the one that worked for Hyundai in Georgia, where over 400 contractors had some out of status or other problem, right? Go to those companies. Go to the big companies who have out of status people. Go to universities that allow their students to lapse and get that right. But grabbing people off the street is not how to do this. Number two, I'm far more concerned about where this is going, Dean, because as I say on Substack, we are on a slippery slope to checkpoints where we get pulled over because, were you out in the sun today? You look kind of brown. Or, bank robbers are mostly males with brown hair and brown eyes. I think we need to check you out because you're walking in the bank. We are really getting to the point of a militarization, federalization of our law enforcement, and they want us to get used to getting grabbed and detained. And the nonsense that Kavanaugh wrote on this decision about, well, in my eyes, and from a law enforcement viewpoint, this is kind of like a Terry stop, which I'm sure you studied in law school.
Sure.
Terry versus Ohio. A cop can stop and ask for your ID, ask for your ID. The guy's casing a jewelry store or a bank. He's looking really nervous. The court says, yeah, you can ask for his ID. They're not asking for his ID. Kavanaugh said it's a brief detention. No, it's not. It's a kidnap. So we've lost it in terms of law enforcement grabbing us for whatever the hell reason they articulate.
And I'm so glad, Frank, that you gave an example, because I was going to ask, I want people to understand, what does reasonable suspicion up until now mean? And you gave an example that it's specific to a person, right? A person's actions in the totality it's got to be something more than a hunch. That's the courts say. It's got to be something articulable. And that person, and we're going to go question them, running out of, cars coming up and the agents coming out mass out of a van and grabbing everybody at a park is not reasonable suspicion. But they're saying that's okay now. That's what so concerns me. Everybody who was working at a Home Depot, in their lot there, it's just mass rounding up people at the bus stops. These are examples that Sotomayor gave in her dissent there. That's the difference. And I want people to understand that it's not reasonable suspicion. Shouldn't it be person by person, not a group of people hanging out?
It could, yeah. It should be specific to that person or, organization or what have you. But the notion
Right, if it's a gang
right. The notion that you're committing a violation because of your skin color or accent is outrageous. I also challenge the notion, and I've yet to see the data here, that if you're hanging out at Home Depot looking for work, you're more likely than not illegal. I'm sorry, prove that to me. Prove it. Prove it that the guys in the kitchen at the restaurant I enjoy are all illegal. Show me the data. I'm not buying it. And they're not producing it.
And to that very point, in Kavanaugh, in his opinion, he wrote the idea 10% of people in LA are illegally in the US. Where did you get that from, buddy? Like, he doesn't even cite anything. Like, I'm not kidding. It's like he's writing a Substack. You're the Supreme Court justice. You just can't whimsically say things like other things, like to the idea that officers may briefly stop the individual. And, the questioning in these circumstances is typically brief. Yet Sotomayor puts notes where a U.S. citizen was detained. They took him from work, brought him to a warehouse. They questioned for like a half hour, let him go. They visited that same place 4 times in 10 days. If you're an employer, do you want people who look brown? Maybe that's part of the goal, not to hire brown people, just hire white people going forward, because you don't want this hassle.
And let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that 10% of the people that Kavanaugh's somehow right, or whoever the hell said it, that 10% of people in LA are undocumented. That has nothing to do with reasonable suspicion of why you're stopping that brown person, right?
Absolutely. That's like saying anything like in the days when there was more terrorists by ISIS or Al-Qaeda. Well, Muslims are doing it. Yeah, like 0.0001% of Muslims are doing it. So the rest of us have to suffer. Are you kidding me? That's why I fight against it, because I know what it's like on a personal level to have this bullshit thrown at us. And, the district court judge in her ruling said she found, quote, a mountain of evidence that enforcement tactics violated the Constitution. Mountain of evidence is not a little. That's a lot. So I like Sotomayor so much, in which she wrote, and the other 2 liberals joined in. One of the lines I thought was really good, that countless people in Los Angeles have been grabbed, thrown to the ground, and handcuffed simply because of their looks, their accents, and the fact they make a living by doing manual labor. Today, the court needlessly subjects countless more to these same exact indignities. That's what they've greenlit. I don't think she's exaggerating. If you're ICE now, you're like, we can go anywhere and do anything. And if they're brown, they have an accent, they work at Home Depot, they do landscaping, whatever it might be, we can go after them now. Nobody's safe. Families are not safe. No one's safe.
DHS has said exactly that. They are going to double down now
Of course.
on these so-called enforcement actions. They feel empowered and emboldened, and rightly so. The highest court in the land has said, go at it.
It's very frustrating, this Supreme Court, and Democrats, not to get political with you, you're more of a law enforcement expert, but I really think Democrats in 2026 and especially 2028 have to make reforming the Supreme Court as an important issue, because with six of them that are conservative, you just need five. They can overturn any law that's passed. They can gut laws that have been around a long time, like the Voting Rights Act, overturn Roe v. Wade, overturn laws that deal with gun violence to save lives. And even this now, moving us backwards further and further. So, I mean, I don't know. We're going to see how this plays out. I mean, and I love that Kavanaugh wrote this kind of bullshit, like, so at the federal side, he can keep his head up. To be clear, apparent ethnicity alone cannot furnish reasonable suspicion. Under this court's case law regarding immigration stops, however, it can be a relevant factor when considered along with other salient factors. So he's just saying, oh, you can't just pull someone over because, hey, they're brown, we're going to get them. But other things you can consider, like the fact that they speak Spanish, or they speak English with a Spanish accent, or they're working at jobs where Latinos are working at. Like, right. it just everything he said was undermined by everything else he said.
If this is a math equation, right, we still aren't getting to reasonable suspicion. So, Kavanaugh, I'm careful to say, it's not just your skin color. You got to have these other things. What are the other things? You speak broken English and you're hanging out in the wrong place. Oh, that equals reasonable. I see. Oh, okay. Yeah.
All this because we're living through it. But I want to go back to something you said earlier. And, the judge, again, Sotomayor laid it out, and I read it for people earlier. And I want to go back because she talked about Operation at Large, that they were called that, for example, agents pulled up in 4 unmarked cars to a bus stop in Pasadena. The doors opened and men in masks with guns started running at 3 Latino men who were sitting there drinking their morning coffee, waiting to go to work. This is the America that Justice Kavanaugh and the Supreme Court said is okay. So just want to say that was the exact fact pattern talked about in the underlying case. And Kavanaugh saying it's okay. The court is saying that's okay. Masked men coming out of a car with no badges, with guns, going, get them. And this is America.
They're turning a blind eye to this. This is willful ignorance on the court. They know. They can turn on the TV. They can read the Times and the Post. They know what's going on, and they're pretending it's not going on. This is far bigger. You noted earlier that I'm not political. I'm a law enforcement guy. Yes, it's all true. This is much bigger than politics for all of us. You mentioned possible reform of the court. Look, we should all accept that on any given term or election of the court, you're going to have conservative decisions and justices, and you're going to have moderates, and that's life on the court. This is not what's happening, though. What's happening here is not a conservative decision. It's an ignorance and a willful turning from the Constitution and precedent. That's what's going on here. If people think, oh, Frank's upset because there's a conservative court. No, fine, great. Half the time I'll agree with conservative decisions. It doesn't matter to me. It's the unconstitutional nature of what's happening that has me passionate.
So when the FBI, where you used to work, sees a decision like this, does it impact the training going forward of agents about what grounds are to stop people?
Yeah, so when it was beat into my head, not just in law school, but in the FBI, at the academy, and subsequently all the legal training we get every year, this concept of reasonable suspicion is devolving. And yes, law enforcement's going to get trained differently on what the totality of the circumstances constitutes reasonable suspicion. And the concern here is, does that get you a search warrant now? Skin color and broken English and hanging out at the wrong place. What? And by the way, I recall fondly the days when people would apply for search warrants. I don't see that happening either. So yes, training's going to change. And let's be real, recruitment has already changed. Look at what ICE is doing. You don't have to have a college degree. You can be 18 years old. And you get 8 weeks of training. The FBI recently, according to NBC News reports, said similarly, we're going to waive the college degree if you have prior law enforcement experience. You know what this is about. This is about hiring people who really can't work the complex cases and aren't gonna raise their hand if they're told to do something else unconstitutional. And the Quantico Academy of Training that was at one point 20 weeks is going down to 2 months, my friend. Do you think you can train an FBI agent to work counterterrorism, counterespionage, cyber crime, complex transnational organized crime? You think civil rights, or you think you could do that in 2 months? Hell no. But that's a deliberate situation that's going on.
I don't know if they're desperate because for recruits or it's more of an indoctrination that is consistent with MAGA. And we could teach you one Zoom. They should do commercials. Want to be an FBI agent and just in 15 minutes on Zoom, we can teach you how. Join today. And it's just a picture of Donald Trump and you repeat him. By the way, going back to Kavanaugh, 10% of the people in LA are illegally in the US. That's what he writes. So 90% are legally there, though, Kavanaugh. That's the weird thing. What about 90% are legally there?
Right.
So only 1 out of 10. And you're going, well, anybody brown, but give me the numbers of how many people of any subgroup that you're trying to go after. And I guess you can extrapolate this out to saying, if they go, well, in this community, people are committing this type of crime or this skin color or this ethnicity. So if anyone in that group is now, that's a salient factor and you can consider it. We don't want that. You don't want that in America, but you shouldn't do is shortcut the police work. Do your work, develop your case, develop your leads, get your sources, and then go get a warrant and arrest people.
I've called this lazy law enforcement. You're absolutely right. It's lazy. You don't do your work. You don't show your work. And it typically would not have stood up in court until this week.
And I'm chatting with our friend Frank Figliuzzi. All right, so Frank, let's shift gears. We've gone through that a lot, and I understand why you're upset, especially as someone who served in law enforcement for so many years. So I found this really curious. Speaker Johnson, at first, point blank, on Friday, said Donald Trump was an FBI informant trying to take down Jeffrey Epstein. And I played on the show, and on Friday, I predicted either this is a new thing that Trump said, let's trial balloon it, or he's going to walk it back. And then he walked it back. And of course, and I was on MS with Ali Velshi. I'm like, Ali, you know who was FBI director at the time, that 2003, 2004, when he was an undercover agent? Robert Mueller was FBI director, the guy who investigated him. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen there. So first of all, before we get to the walk back, what was your initial reaction to hearing that now Donald Trump all of a sudden was an FBI undercover agent?
I have to concede, I laughed. And if this weren't so gravely funny, Dean, this would be a comedy routine, but it is gravely funny.
Right.
We're talking about the exploitation of underage girls. But here's the deal. I jumped on Substack and I'm relatively new on Substack, but the video I did on this topic of Johnson claiming that Trump's an informant is my highest rated video on Substack so far, but by far. And,
right.
And here's the thing. First, Johnson was trying to help Trump, I guess, but he did harm. He did serious harm to Trump. Why? Because he put the issue of this informant claim squarely on Trump's shoulder. Because as I say on Substack, who is the only person that can waive privacy rights and say, I want my files exposed? Give me, if I was a confidential informant and there's a confidential green file, it used to be green in my day when we had paper, release it. And any interview I did with the Bureau, release it. And I thought, in about 24 hours, Trump's head must have exploded when he realized Johnson just put this right back on me. I can't release things that don't exist. There's no confidential informant file. Oh my God.
So then okay, so Monday, listen, and let's lawyer this. We'll listen very carefully to the short clip here. Matt, let's play clip 5, Speaker Johnson, then defending it, and listen to what he says now. Clip number 5, please.
What we preferred conversation was what the victim's attorney said. More than a decade ago, President Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. He was one of the only prominent people, as everyone has reported, not President Trump, but everybody about him, that he was willing to help law enforcement.
He was willing to call law enforcement. He did not, but he was willing. He entertained it. Johnson either hates Trump and is trying to undermine him, because this was terrible cleanup, and the guy's a lawyer. Oh, Donald Trump, and I don't know why Ramon Araujo didn't go he was willing to call law enforcement. So did he ever? because he knew, because he's clearly saying Trump knew what was going on. So he knew Epstein was, what he did is painted Trump as knowing what Epstein was doing and saying he's such a good guy. He was willing to call law enforcement about a child sex ring, but he didn't. He didn't call it. Like, I don't know why we didn't get that question by Mano Raju.
Do you remember during Trump's term in the Oval Office, I think it was George Stephanopoulos who asked him about the Russia allegations and the campaign. And he said, you know, Mr. President, what would you do if another country came to you and offered you dirt on your opponent? And what did Trump say? I don't know why you'd call the FBI. So now we're to believe that he called the FBI right away when he heard that Epstein was molesting women. Here's what I think, and I say this in my Substack video. Here's what I think likely may have happened, which is Trump would be a logical FBI interview if you're going back in time and you're looking at and you're interviewing all of Epstein's associates, people who hung out with him at home, on the plane, and you're asking them questions. Yes. Do I think it's likely, possible that Trump was interviewed? Yes. What would that interview have looked like? Mr. Trump, you know, we know you hang with Epstein. Have you ever seen anything untoward? And what could Trump have said? It would be damning if he said, yeah, I think he's having sex with underage girls and I did nothing. Unlikely. Number two, you know, we do hang a lot. I do see a lot of young girls, and it's a little eyebrow raising. Those are the two options. And let's see what great humanitarian and American you were, and release your interviews if they're there.
That's great. But by the way, today, Carolyn Levitt, to put a button on it, made it very clear. Let's hear clip number 4, Matt.
He's made that quite clear.
You know, Mike Johnson came out and said that the president was an FBI informant. Do you know what he meant by that, if it's not true?
I can affirm that is not true. I think the speaker was referring to the fact that President Trump kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago property for reasons the president has already discussed.
So I think, what a weird choice of words. I can affirm. Like, she doesn't want to say, like, I can swear. Like, I don't know why. That's not a normal word people say. That's something somebody told her, say, you're going to affirm. This girl's in her 20s. She's not using the word, and she literally is. She's not using the word affirm in normal conversation. I thought that was a weird choice of words.
Sounds like lawyers weighed in on this at the White House. And so the other thing she doesn't want to say is the Speaker of the House lied to the American people and the president's upset about it. She's not going to say that either.
I also think that where Johnson made it worse for Trump was on Friday. And again, he repeated it Monday. You don't know how many times I've discussed this issue with Donald Trump, Epstein file. So you guys are talking about it all the time, and you're telling us it's a hoax. But you're talking about it all the time because it's an obsession of Donald Trump's. It really is, because there's something in here, whatever it is in his own mind, it's enough to make him do what he's doing, Stonewall, getting the troops surrounding him, and like, everything's a lie, their birthday cards, everything's a lie. And Trump could be wrong. Whatever's in there, his base might be like, we don't care. But he thinks they care enough, that America would care enough, that he has to keep it from us. So that brings us to the birthday card. If it's true, and it seems, I mean, just so it's clear for people, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell, in her testimony with Todd Blanche, was asked about the birthday card. And she said it was her idea. It was based on her father, who was Robert Maxwell's 60th birthday. The idea of getting all friends to send stuff in. She confirmed people sent it in. I don't remember if Donald Trump did, but Jeffrey Epstein asked people to send stuff in as well. She didn't deny he sent something in. And then they sent it out to be bound in a leather book, which it was, at 2003, and then kept behind Jeffrey Epstein. And she would see it in his office, that he was proud of this. Now, the idea that it's fake or fraudulent is bullshit. We know that. So just assume, Frank, for a second, it's true. Is it significant from a law enforcement point of view at all in anything that Donald Trump send this beautiful, essentially a love letter to his good friend on his birthday?
Yeah, especially it is, especially when it's taken in the totality of the circumstances. What do I mean by that? First, examine the writing, which refers to this secret. You know, we share something in common. We share something. Yes, we do. Last ending words. May all your days, be a secret. Be a new secret. To that, okay. What first thing you're going to ask somebody if you're investigating sex crimes against minors? Donald, what does that? What did you mean by that? And of course, he could say
a wonderful secret. Yep.
Yeah, he could say under oath that it does. I never wrote that. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, that's one option. He could make something up. We share a love for beautiful women, which I think he actually has said something to that effect publicly anyway.
The year
Right?
before that, 2002, he said to New York
And he said,
Magazine.
I,
Yep.
and he likes them young, something like that. Okay, that's what I meant.
Exactly.
Okay. Um, let's go to the other cards that are now revealing themselves, these birthday cards and wishes. Oh my God. There's a sketch of what appears to be a depiction of Epstein being massaged, I'm being polite, by young-looking women in this drawing. So in other words, and the theme of a lot of these cards and letters and drawings are quite sexual in nature and seem to indicate that others in a larger circle of friends have some knowledge that some kind of sexual conduct goes on with this guy on a regular basis with young women. That's the totality of the circumstances by which you have to view this single card allegedly from Donald Trump. That all of the theme, much of the themes of these cards is quite sexualized and involves young women, young girls.
And to your point, it's exactly what I wrote in my Substack, Frank. I plugged my Substack for a second today about how when you see the other images, you get a sense they all knew what was going on. And the one image that has Jeffrey Epstein and it's hand drawn was in the birthday book that Epstein is holding balloons to little girls. They're clearly children.
That's right.
It says 1983, and then it says 2003, and now women they may have grown up, at least in this picture here, and they're scantily clad. Another one was a joke thing with Trump and Epstein, and it says Epstein's holding up a big oversized check. Did you see that one? And then in it says Jeffrey showing early talents with money and women, sells fully depreciated woman. They redact the name to Donald Trump for $22,500. And so even the people in the circle knew how close Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were. To do a joke about Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein, it tells you something about the circle of friends. And those guys should be interviewed. They should be interviewed. I don't know what the crime's going to be at this point, but this is a group of people who were involved in some bad shit. I got to be honest.
There's no
I'm
question.
from Jersey. That's what we'd say.
No question. In my mind, I supervised, Dean, a crimes against children squad briefly during my career. It was probably the most painful experience I had supervising anything was crimes against children. It's awful. And the idea that your circle of friends is yucking it up on your birthday about how, hey, wink, wink, nod, nod. We all know what's going on. Holy mackerel.
It's unbelievable. And I mean, Frank, do you have any sense of why we know that the sweetheart deal the Epstein gets in 2008 by Alex Acosta, who was then the U.S. attorney in Miami in the Bush administration. And then no one investigates to 2019, 18, 19. He gets indicted by the Southern District of New York, finally. Over 1,000 victims we know about. And, a lot of this took place in Florida. And Pam Bondi was AG in Florida from 2011 to 2019. No evidence of any investigation I can find at all into him by her. What is going on? I don't understand. This was a massive operation with powerful people. And it seems like, and Democrats and Republicans, there's no denying it wasn't just a Republican thing. And it seems like this was some kind of eyes wide shut thing where everyone's like, let's not even leave it be. Let's not investigate it at all.
Okay, so I do want to, it's going to sound like I'm defending my old agency, but I worked in Miami for 5 years. I was in a number 2 position there. I left before this happened, but I know some of these people. The FBI Miami office investigated the hell out of this allegation when approached by a local or county sheriff or police department, right? They brought it to the bureau.
I saw the documentary.
Yeah, this is kind of way over our heads. Can you please help? It was thoroughly investigated as best as I can tell. It goes, as all FBI investigations criminally do, it went to the U.S. attorney, and that's where it fell apart. And that's where the sweetheart deal happened, where it was kicked back to the locals, and this deal of, hey, Epstein can serve some time, and come and go as long as he locks himself up at night. Okay. It's like the Andy Griffith show. Remember Otis, the drunk who would come in and lock himself up when he had too much to drink? Yeah.
I think I remember that. I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So then what happens? Alex Acosta then later gets a cabinet position as Secretary of Labor under Trump. And all kinds of things happen. But eventually, New York FBI gets it. And lo and behold, here come the indictments, Maxwell and Epstein. And who's the crack prosecutor that gets assigned this in the Southern District? Jim Comey's daughter, who, a few months ago, gets summarily dismissed from her position. Yeah.
Well, look, there's a lot of things that stink. I also think that Pam Bondi, and I wrote about it for Substack. I talked about it on the show. I'm going to revisit it now that people focus more, because I wrote it very early in July when this stuff was just breaking. I think there are legitimate questions for the media to ask her. Why didn't you investigate Jeffrey Epstein? In Florida, things happened in your state. And the reason I know things happened in her state while she was still AG is that Jeffrey Berman in the prosecution here in New York said after the sweetheart deal in 2008, he came out and continued to abuse women. So she's AG of Florida from 2011 to 2019. And here's the rub, Frank. She said, and I went back and read stuff in her campaign, that going against people who exploit child is her top priority. And she prosecuted many people for exploiting children, but not a hint. If you Google her name through that time, you can't find anything about her even mentioning Jeffrey Epstein. And I think it was keep your hands off from this guy. There's people in power, and it was just easy for her to let it go. And then Trump rewards her as AG for the United States of America.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know. That's the problem, Dean. We really don't know. And it's
how big this thing is. Do you think this could be bigger than we're even getting? Like, if there really are 1,000 victims and the women came forward, and either the idiot Marjorie Greene said, we heard from the women, and this involves people in Saudi and Israel and Europe and the United States, and over 1,000 people in power. And Jasmine Crockett was saying there's bankers involved and all this stuff. They heard this directly from the women. How did this go all these years? Like, how deep and how big is this?
I truly, yes. So it's big. And there's some powerful people involved. That's my educated conclusion based on what we know so far and what we're hearing the victims say. I mean, for God's sakes, you have British royalty involved.
Yes.
So yes, it's big. Yeah, and is it possible that Donald Trump actually never laid a hand on an underage girl, but rather he's protecting friends, big donors? Who knows? Who knows? But that's the problem. We don't know. And politically, it's death for him. And he's still not getting it. What is it that's so compelling? And I hear the arguments, Dean, hey, you're going to ruin innocent people's lives. If you say that they were simply on the plane, you're ruining them. No, I don't want to hear about anybody who was simply on the plane. I want to hear about people who the file and the investigation shows molested or raped underage women. Thanks. It's not that hard. It's not.
Right. I agree with you. And we had Eli Mastallo last week, and his big thing was that he thinks that Trump is, whatever Trump did, he figures he can get away with it. It's the people in power who helped him get to where he is that might be implicated. And that's really, and I thought that was really insightful comment. You've just said the same thing. It's very interesting that whatever, because I know Trump's done so many horrible things. He attempted a coup. You know, he bragged about grabbing women without anyone saying it's okay, like before they even say yes. E. Jean Carroll, in a case over here, $83 million, like so many things. And he's been fine with it. It might be someone else, maybe someone close to him.
Yeah. And do we as the American people, do we have a right to know if the president of the United States is being extorted? If one of these,
that's interesting.
If one of the, now again, I'm left to engage in conjecture because we're blind. And so, is it possible that one of these powerful donors or friends is saying, Donald, if you goddamn release my part of the file where I'm molesting people, I'm gonna reveal all that I know about you, sir. And but do we have a right to know that? You bet we do.
Of course we do.
Yeah.
I think you're on this. That's why we discuss it with you and also with listeners. Everybody makes me smarter because I have a lot of facts. And then sometimes people come in and put things together. I'm like, extortion. That would make sense if Russian mobsters were involved, who knows who's involved. Nobody knows what their weak point is. And you used to work in getting people to be spies or turning them. And I imagine you would look for those points that are vulnerable, whatever it might be. And it might not be Trump personally. It might be a family member. It might be a loved one where they're going to suffer horribly if this file comes forward because of a threat to them we have no idea what's there. I just think this is potentially bigger and it can get really ugly. I don't know what more we're going to learn in time. That's the interesting thing. I mean, so, well, Frank, before I let you go, what is your Substack in case people want to look it up and subscribe to it? Is it just Frank Figliuzzi?
Thank you. It's the real Frank Figliuzzi, because there are so many others out there. The real Frank Figliuzzi.
I like that. All right, the real Frank Figliuzzi. Frank, thanks for staying along. It was a nice conversation. I always enjoyed chatting with you. I look forward to chatting with you in the future.